My name is Zack Bush. I'm a medical doctor, and my background is in internal medicine, which is kind of general adult care, a lot of hospital medicine kind of stuff. And so I worked in the hospital system at the University of Virginia for a number of years, and then went on to endocrinology and metabolism training, which is the study of hormones and how they control our body and how they manage food, how they give us resources for brain health and muscle health and everything else, and how we stay healthy and young or age too quickly. And so that was my study. So I saw a lot of diabetes, a lot of autoimmune disease in the clinics and that sort of thing. And then I really felt like I wasn't really getting too far with my clinical stuff, so I dove into research, and my research was in the cancer realm. And so with the cancer, I was studying the regulation of hormones and nutrition on cancer. And in that process, I was developing chemotherapy from vitamin A compounds. And so that journey was kind of long and unexpected, and finally I decided to get another specialty in hospice and palliative care, which is end-of-life care. Because the journey as a physician, when you're given a huge toolbox of resources, of drugs and medications, and you start to apply that to a patient population, what you find out really quickly is you can make people look good on paper. You can get their cholesterol numbers right, you can get their blood sugars looking pretty good, but they keep going downhill very quickly. And so then you add more medications and they go down faster. And so what I quickly realized, well, it wasn't that quick, but over about an 8-year period of being a medical doctor, I realized that even though I was trained at the pinnacle, kind of highest educational state in my entire industry, I had not been given the tools to understand human health at all. And my patients were increasingly walking in saying, "Doc, I don't want my diabetes. I don't want insulin. The insulin makes me feel worse and gain weight faster. How do I do this through nutrition?" And the answer for me for a number of years was nutrition isn't a part of this equation. It's just pharmaceutical. It's a medication problem, not a nutritional problem. Which of course you guys are all sitting here knowing that is the most ridiculous stance you could possibly have. And I'm not a stupid individual. I'm relatively intelligent, and I should have been able to come to that conclusion sooner for myself, but we are so steeped and brainwashed in this pharmaceutical model as doctors that it was a novel concept to me to hear that maybe nutrition was going to be an important piece of the puzzle. And so that took me down the avenue of leaving academia in 2010, and I started a nutrition center. I had to learn nutrition from scratch. And the interesting phenomenon was that as I started studying nutrition, I realized that all of the stuff that I was reading and being told was truth in the nutrition world was very, very antiquated information. There was not the level of science that I had learned and gained expertise in that we developed drugs and chemotherapy. And I knew so much biochemistry and cell biology and realized that nutrition had never really been detailed out to any of that level. We simply haven't put any resources as species into really understanding what food is and what nutrition is and what good nutrition involves and how it interacts with the human body. So it was an astonishing journey to go down this avenue of realizing we don't know anything about human health. And so the bonus that I want to get to all of you guys before we dive into this topic of food and the importance of all of us returning to some sort of food independence, I want to give you the end point, which is what should we do with our food? Once our food is in our bodies, it should be mobilized into resources for our brain and muscle. The interesting thing that many of you know, there's physical therapists in the audience, there's a lot of you in the housing and kind of community development arenas. Everybody who's ever designed a nice neighborhood knows that a park should be somewhere in that mix. There should be a place to walk the dogs, there should be a place to walk the kids, there should be a place for the kids to run around, there should be soccer fields, there should be basketball courts, there should be tennis courts, there should be all of these things, because to be human is to move. Have you guys ever been in a nursing home? Have you spent any time in a hospital? What happens to the humanity when it stops moving? It disappears, doesn't it? You don't see humanity in the halls of hospitals. You see suffering. You see humanity suffering because it stopped moving. If you put an individual in a hospital bed, it's astonishing how fast they disappear. Their muscles atrophy in a matter of days. We often have to put people in nursing homes just to help them recover from the hospital because they lost such function in just 3 or 5 or 7 days in a hospital. And the astonishing thing is it's increasingly our children that are the ones in the hospital. And so we're going to go through some of those statistics, but ultimately it is about movement. If I can pass on 20 years of my education to you, it is move. Move, move, move. And if you move, you will be driven. Your body will tell you how to fuel. If you don't move and you stay stagnant in your day, in your work day, in your offices, and you're not moving, then you're going to be in a drug relationship with your food chain, just as you're going to be in a drug relationship with your doctors. And so we're going to start this session on food with movement, all right? And so if you Google my name, I do all my research on all this fancy stuff in the labs and everything else, and the thing that's going to pop up first is likely going to be the 4-minute workout, because about 5 years ago I designed a 4-minute workout, and that's what's gone crazy on YouTube and everything else is the 4-minute workout. So I'm going to teach you guys the 4-minute workout. It turns out we're exercising just as wrong as we're eating in this country. This whole thing about trying to get to a gym 3 days a week and work out for an hour, that is spitting in the wind compared to what we are capable of doing at the physiology level. And so I'm going to teach you a 4-minute workout because you don't have to change your clothes, you don't have to shower afterwards, you're hardly going to break a sweat, but you can't make an excuse for not moving for 4 minutes in your day. And so that's why this is so powerful, is it turns out that we are engineered to move, and that movement is what induces healing. And this is why putting people in a stagnant, bed-bound state in a hospital is so ridiculous. If they come in not doing well, you need to get them moving. We have a physical therapist or two in the audience. Those physical therapists know the power of getting people to move. But how frustrating is it for a physical therapist only to be able to work with somebody a few days a week or once a week or whatever it is to move their shoulder for half an hour, and the insurance company will pay for that. The 4-minute workout is us taking back the responsibility of being human. Being human is to move. And that's as much spiritual as it is physical, right? We can all be stagnant in our spiritual life. We can all be stagnant in our own sense of self-identity, or we can move. We need to move because we need to rise as a nation, but more importantly, we need to rise as a species because this species is on the brink now. We are either going to go extinct over the next 50 years, or we are going to rise past anything that's ever been done before. And so I am inviting you to the conversation around food today so that we can all rise in power, in beauty, in our own independence as human beings. And that's going to put us in touch with community on a whole different level. All right, so we got to move. We're going to rise. So rise up out of your chairs. Rise up with me. You're going to need a little bit of space. So we're going to do some simple squats. So step away from your chair. And what we're going to do, so spread out in the room a bit. And so we're going to do this 4-minute workout. And the way in which this is going to be done is you're going to be swinging your arms a little bit. And so I need you to just gently now raise your arms to your sides and make sure you haven't punched anyone. All right? So you're going to need that much space. All right? And then we're going to start moving here, okay? And so the movement is going to be starting with a squat. And so a squat doesn't need to be too deep. So if you have knee problems or hip problems, you just go as deep as it's comfortable. If that's just to here, that's totally fine. But a good squat is going to be butt back. So your butt's going back as if you're going to sit down into a chair and you want to keep your arms out just to stay balanced, right? All right, very good. So now what we're going to do is we're going to do 10 of those pretty quick, okay? And the speed is kind of important as you learn the 4-minute workout because we need to keep the muscles engaged. Come on in, y'all. It looks scary. You're wondering, what the hell did we do walking into this room? What did you just get sucked into? All right, so you guys find a little open space and you all fit in. All right, so we're going to do 10 quick squats. Ready? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. You guys are awesome. Now we're doing the arms. 90 degrees on both sides. We're going to do 10 on each arm. That's 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Now we're going to do what looks like a jumping jack without a jump. So we're going to go right to the top and then right to the bottom. Click up here, click down here. Very easy, right? All right. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Awesome. Now we're going to go straight over the head. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Now we're going back to the squats. Oh boy. Work it, girls. I like it. Woo! 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Back to the arms. Woohoo! Let's do it. You've only been working out for 2 minutes so far. I don't know why you're freaking out. It's 2 minutes more than you've ever worked out. 9, 10. Okay, big circles. Big circles. Woo, boy, those shoulders are burning. Somebody's talking to you. All right, if you have a shoulder problem, you can do the opposite motion. You go into the prayer position here, straight over your head, break them apart. Like that, like you're swimming. So if your shoulder hurts, you can go that direction. All right? All right, so now we've done the shoulders, now we're moving back straight over the head. Oh my, feel those shoulders talking to you. How come you never reach over your head? Isn't that weird? We can, but we never do. One more set, last set. We're almost there. 4, 5. You're going to be stiff tomorrow. You're going to be like, that crazy doctor. What did he make us do? 9, 10. All right, last set on the arms. Woo, burning. That's 9 and 10. Here we go. Rise up. Come on. All right, over the head now. Get it on. All right. There it is. There's 10. Woo! All right. Now, before you sit down, you thought you were done, but no, you're done. Done working out, but before you sit down, I want you to pay attention to what's happening in your body right now because it's going to tie into everything here. Close your eyes for a second and feel your fingertips. What do your fingers feel like? They're tingling. Isn't that weird? What the heck is happening to your fingers? We didn't even exercise your fingers. What we just did was a 4-minute workout. You guys can sit down now. That 4-minute workout I designed 5 years ago because of the study of something called nitric oxide. Nitric oxide is this cool little protein that's released from your blood vessels when you run out of oxygen in a muscle group. We just ran out of oxygen. You guys felt that achiness. That's what we're going for. In that 4 minutes, you just released your total body reservoir of nitric oxide in 16 of your largest muscle groups. That is now opening up the blood vessels in every space of your body. That's why your fingers are tingling right now. The blood vessels are all dilating. There's new nutrients and energy and oxygen going to your fingertips. Amen? Amen. And to your brain. Amen. Okay. All right. Yeah.
So what's going on? Your fingers not tingling.
Well, you just can't feel them yet, and that's okay. Not unusual. And what you'll find is the goal for the 4-minute workout is to do this 3 times a day. 4 minutes, 3 times a day. That's 12 minutes of your life. Could you do that for your longevity? 4 minutes, 3 times a day. That's 21 times a week. You are now exercising better than anybody who's ever just gone to the gym. Because you only work out at the gym for 90 seconds when it comes to nitric oxide. If you start exercising like we just did, you run out of nitric oxide in about 90 seconds. And so we just cycled 16 muscle groups to the point of exhaustion, released 90 seconds worth of nitric oxide in those 16 big muscle groups, and dilated everything in your body. You're now healthier for that. So 4-minute workout, 3 times a day. You just Google Zack Bush, MD. You can find it there, or 4-minute workout, Zack Bush. You'll find it on YouTube. Go through that. Teach your kids and your grandkids to do that with you, because they will be better students for it. They will be better athletes for it. They will live longer and healthier for just moving a few times a day. Kind of like a circuit. And I'm not saying that a gym's bad. But what I'm saying is a gym is selling you a little short if you do it 3 times a week. If you go up and go to your gym 3 times a day, you're getting your full potential. Now, you should go to the gym once in a while, or even better, get outside and go for a run, or play your tennis, or do your basketball. Get out and move, because that's why we're here. We're here to move. That's what we're supposed to do as humans. So I'm not saying the 4 minutes is the end of your game. It's the beginning of your game. That's how you get your game on, is to do the 4-minute workout a few times a day and really get revved up. All right, I can officially start my talk now, because the main session should be about over. Are we good? All right. Who is that guy standing on stage? My name is Zack Bush, and here, I'll show it to you. There we go. That's my name there, Zack Bush. And I'm a medical doctor. For those of you who just came in, I've got way too much education. After medical school, I did another 12 years of education on top of that. So all told, I was in higher education for 17 years, which means that I got into deeper school debt than anybody on the planet. But in addition to all that education, I learned by the end of that it was all pretty much useless. Not useless, right? Nothing's useless in nature. But it was in the wrong direction. It was not in the direction of health. I spent 17 years studying disease, and I was an expert in managing diseases like diabetes, thyroid disease, obesity. That's my field of endocrinology and metabolism, is all that, and then the autoimmune conditions. But my research was in cancer, so I got a very broad experience and strange amounts of expertise in different things. And so that brings us to our topic of nutrition, because in 2010 I left academia. I left because my patients were dying under my care. My patients were young too. I had an 18-year-old girl who'd been under my care for 5 years, had diabetes from an early age. Her whole family had diabetes. And they lived in a horrible food environment. And so I was giving her more and more insulin and medications, and she was getting increasingly depressed with every medication I started her on. And so then I was starting her on antidepressants and a bunch of different drugs, and she finally committed suicide at 18 years of age. That was my wake-up call. I had done it all right. I had done it by the books, and she died under my care, a depressed, hopeless woman at 18 with her whole life ahead of her. She committed suicide. That was the moment I realized I have no idea what I'm doing. All that education, all of the drugs at my disposal, I don't know what I'm doing when it comes to bringing health and hope to human beings. And so I left academia. I went and actually got a subspecialty in hospice and palliative care at that point, because I figured, well, if I can't help people live, maybe I can help them die well. And that was some of the most rewarding stuff I've ever done, is hospice and palliative care, because you get to see the spirit awake at the moment of death. And my passion for this day, what I'm going to pass on to you, which is a bunch of science, a lot of it may not make sense to you, but the brush strokes are going to be there for you to, I think, inspire some hope and maybe some questions in your mind as to where you want to go and where you want to take your grandkids to if we're all going to survive this thing together. We need to survive. There are 7 billion people on the planet. There's a lot of people out there in academia that thinks that's just simply too many people. And so they talk about population control, they talk about trying to reduce fertility rates and all of that. There's some dark conversations going on about 7 billion people. But what doesn't get mentioned is that that's actually 7 billion souls. Isn't that different? 7 billion people walking around that we don't know, and I fly all over the world lecturing and teaching now, and I fly in all these places, I'm like, my gosh, look at all these people. I don't know any of them. There's a 4 million people in Atlanta, and I don't know any of them. That's amazing. They're not people, they're souls. 4 million souls in this greater Atlanta area. That's a profound thing, because souls, I believe, didn't just show up when you were born. I think they've been around a while, and they are now inhabiting your body. But that soul identity, I think, has been with the concept of God since the beginning of time. I think that we are ancient beings that have showed up right now. 7 billion ancient souls showed up right now. Wild, crazy. Never so many souls on earth as today. And you know what? Those of us in this room showed up right here, right now, together. Because we are on purpose. We are in purpose, and we got something to do. And so I'm very excited to pass on everything on, and I'm very excited you are here, because you guys are natives of change. You guys are change agents in your environment. You have untapped wisdom and capacity because you are drugged up by the food that we are eating. You are not functioning at your highest amount because the food you are consuming is keeping you at a lower state of frequency resonance. You are suppressed.
Go ahead.
And it's not just you, it's our children. Look at these numbers on that screen right now. Autism is now 1 in 36 children. This is not getting talked about by the CDC that is sitting here in Atlanta. The Centers for Disease Control in Atlanta in 2002 found out, it was actually the end of 2001, found out that African American children between the ages of 18 months and 2 years of age have an 800% higher rate of autism than the rest of the world. And that has not gotten published. That is not getting talked about. But it's way beyond African Americans. Every single race, creed, and social class is being affected by autism right now. 1 in 36 children with autism, but that's kind of the worst end of the spectrum. Attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. Do any of you have grandchildren affected by this? Any of you have cousins, friends? Everybody's going to raise their hands because it is such a high prevalence. Formally diagnosed by a doctor, 1 in 8 children have attention deficit, and 70% of those are medicated by the time they're 12. But the number, we think, is if you go into a kindergarten class today, how many of those kids do you think actually has attention deficit disorder? I would say probably 1 in 3 at most conservative estimates. And so with 1 in 3 of our children so overwhelmed by the sensory stimulus of just being alive, can't focus, we have ourselves a serious problem. And the pharmaceutical companies have given us a solution called Adderall and Ritalin. These are amphetamines. They're literally amphetamine drugs that have been repackaged. There are 270,000 children under the age of 3 that are now treated with an antidepressant. That's disgusting because it screws up their brain for the rest of their life. We are putting our children in a drug state by such early times. And I'm terrified by the drugs we're using, because if you use amphetamines on a child, it is putting them into a fight or flight state, which of course makes them focus. That's what adrenaline is supposed to do, is make you focus. We're putting kids on adrenaline, on amphetamines, so they can focus on a multiple choice test. When you are focused, when you are in a fight or flight state, I'll tell you what's happened to the rest of your brain is it has shut down the entire creative center. You can't have a creative thought when you are on Adderall or Ritalin. What does that mean for the future of the arts? What does that mean for the future of science? Because science is ultimately a creative art. What does it mean for the future of humanity if we can no longer be creative? It means that the artificial intelligence that's been preached about this week is going to take over because humanity is going to be too boring. The computers might just be more creative than we are if we keep down this course. We are in a desperate state of existence right now today, and it's not being talked about. You can go on down the list and the numbers are insane, right? Allergies, 1 in 4. That's food allergies, environmental allergies, diabetes, 1 in 4, obesity, 1 in 3, major depression. 1 in 2 adults in the United States now have suffered depression. That's compared to 1 in 100 just 100 years ago. Cancer has just hit 1 in 2 in males, 1 in 3 in women. Cancer in 1 in 2 males. It's an astonishing reality. Dementia. Anybody worried about your memory? We should all be a little worried because a big study just got done out of the University of Virginia about 8 years ago, looking across all ages of the population across the United States. Huge study looking at the ability of people to remember, i.e. These early signs of dementia, found that by age 28, 100% had early signs of dementia. By age 28, our memory is failing. We are so sick right now. We are degenerating so quickly right now. Look at these numbers over time. In this scene here, what you've got is the trajectory since 1975. This is 1975 with autism. 1 in 5,000 children. 1 in 5,000 children accelerated. By 1995, we were hitting 1 in 500. 10-fold increase in autism in that short amount of time. But then look what's happened. By 2012, 1 in 88 children with autism. And we thought, well, maybe we're just getting better at recognizing autism. That's what a lot of doctors have said. But I'll tell you, you've never seen an autistic child if you think we missed that in 1970. Autism puts a kid in a state where for a moment they were saying words, they were talking, they were 18 months old and on track, and suddenly they're not. They can't speak, they can't make eye contact, they are so overwhelmed, they are crying and inconsolable most of the day, and they hit their head against their crib or a wall to help them focus and be less overwhelmed. My clinic sees a lot of autistic kids, and we have kids coming in with big lumps on their head from years of hitting their head against a wall so they can focus. We didn't miss that in 1975, but in 2012 we were starting to make that argument of maybe we're just overdiagnosing it, but then we doubled the rates in 3 years. By 2015, between 2012 to 2015, we doubled the prevalence of autism. And now it's increased again to 1 in 36 now. This is the cancer rates just since 1990. 1990 to 2015, over just one generation, we doubled our rates of cancer. An astonishing rate of climb in these chronic diseases. Question in the back. I'm going to try to avoid the vaccine conversation at the moment, but to answer that, I would recommend you all see a documentary film called Vaxxed, V-A-X-X-E-D. This is the expose on the Centers for Disease Control and what happened in 2001. The information got buried intentionally about this link between autism and vaccines. There is a strong prevalence towards African American populations for this, and for autism as well. And that's not explained by vaccines alone. So as a hormone doctor, I could go in now for an hour and talk to you about what the relationship between vitamin D and a number of hormones are to autism as well. Our inability to convert vitamin D at the skin is probably another risk factor for autism. And so that when we go into a vaccine scenario or we get viral infections or we have any number of insults, we're more predisposed to this neurologic injury. But there's something deeper that I want to show you guys that's going to be much more prevalent and more important than the vaccine, so we need to get to that. 1965, the entire U.S. population had 4% with chronic disease. By 2015, 46% of our children have chronic disease. 4% of the entire population to 46% of just our children with chronic disease diagnosis. We are sick. It's expensive. $5.5 trillion annually within the next 7 years. That's 1 in $3 made in the United States will be treating disease. Because remember, that entire $5.5 trillion puts $0 into being healthy. It puts all of it into being disease managed. We don't have a healthcare system. We have a disease management system. It is extremely expensive to treat disease, and that 4-minute workout that we started with is your most powerful tool to saying, no, we're going to start moving. We are going to rise. We are going to be strong so that we can define a path much different than this one. We will collapse our economy by 2035 because on the current track with autism alone, we will have 1 in 3 children with autism by 2035. 1 in 3 children with autism by 2035. That would cripple any economy in the world if that was the only disease. But now imagine that generation being born in 2030, supporting that level of disease in their own generation and supporting the largest geriatric population in all history that has a cancer rate of 80%. That's the numbers we're on track for. I don't care how good a business stimulation we do. I don't care how good our entrepreneurs are. We are going to cripple this nation with disease in the next 18 years. Unless we change everything right now. And I tell you what, the children are going to change everything right now because we are going to survive because we are on purpose. We're not here by accident, so something is going to change massively, and I want to be part of that because I've got kids. My kids are 20 and 17. I want to see them thrive. They're now thinking about having kids. It's terrifying for me to imagine my kids in the next 10 years having kids. It's terrifying. There's got to be one root cause, and this is encouraging to me. The one root cause seems to be buried in this relationship between the brain and the gut because every one of those epidemics on there has now been mapped at the science level to go back to either the gut environment or the brain. And now we know the gut and the brain is really the same environment. So I've got good news in the midst of all that bad news is there is only one problem. That one problem is that we have somehow completely decimated our gut. And therefore we can't make a healthy brain. And so how did we decimate the gut and then subsequently the brain behind it? We are starting to be aware that we are standing on this precipice of life. We could be losing 80% of our population to premature death just in the next 2 generations here. We are going to have a population collapse in the United States because we are infertile. I didn't touch on the fertility numbers there, but 1 in 4 women in America are now infertile, and 1 in 3 males are infertile. What does it mean as a species if you can't procreate? Now, I know a few of you out there is like, I hope my daughter's boyfriend is infertile. But so other than those selective desires, I can tell you it's probably in our interest to be able to have children as a species. We are losing that potential. We are losing the ability to have babies. It's an amazing moment. We are at a tipping point of a species, not just a socioeconomic class or something like that. I'm going to dive into some science here, but it's super cool, and I'm going to keep this on the surface the best I can. My background, again, was in cancer research, and over the last 10 years it's become obvious that cancer is not the genetic disease that we thought it was. It has something, again, to do with the gut. And this study here came out in 2014 and is probably one of the most profound studies to tell us that we have a relationship just like an organic garden to our health. An organic garden, you guys have all heard of compost probably. Compost, the idea of breaking down your food scraps into soil that will then grow plants in it. Well, we are the same way. Our guts are entirely should be an organic garden, thriving with bacteria and fungi and all these things that will compost the food that we put in our mouths into a healthy soil that our root system, i.e. our intestinal lining, will dig into and extract the nutrients we need to grow a healthy body. We are an organic garden to an amazing degree. What this study did is it biopsied breast cancer on one side. So a woman shows up, she's got a breast tumor on the right breast. Go in and we biopsy that, and instead of just saying, oh yeah, cancer cells, this study group did a bold thing as they said, well, what are the bacteria that are present? And they found bacteria thriving around that tumor. It's called Methylobacterium radiotolerans. Well, there was then a thought of like, maybe cancer is an infectious disease. Maybe it's just a bacteria that moves in and causes the cancer. So they biopsied the other breast, the healthy breast, and found out it was full of bacteria, totally different bacteria. Sphingomonas was the dominant species in the healthy breast. Has anybody ever told you you're supposed to have bacteria in your breasts? No. Your doctors don't know that there's bacteria in your breasts. We are not taught this stuff well at all. It'll be 20 years before this gets into normal medical education. There's a 20-year gap between what we know and what the doctors practice. That's a scary 20-year gap because in 16 years we'll have 1 in 3 kids with autism. We don't have time to wait for the doctors to wake up to the education that they need. You guys as consumers and as consumer educators and advocates are the ones that are going to have to be the solution to everything. And so we have this situation where we have bacteria that start to get off and cancer happens. And so they thought, well, maybe it has to do with too much of the bad bacteria being there. So then they tested the load, the actual number of bacteria, and they showed something amazing. The less bacteria present in that cancer, the faster it killed the woman. The more aggressive the cancer got, the fewer bacteria present. The more she was sterilized by her chemo and antibiotics, she died faster. Whoa, that is so different than anything we're taught about cancer. We are not told that cancer is the result of a disconnect from our nature, a disconnect from the organic state of living in an environment of bacteria and fungi that can fuel our human cells into health. We need to change the paradigm very quickly. And so the concept is if you are thriving with bacteria all over your body, you will be healthy, you will be fed, you will thrive, you will have an amazing immune system that would fight that cancer. But if you live a life where you get no bacteria because you never see nature, and you're steeped in antibiotics all the time, and you get chemotherapy every time there's a problem, or you get an antibiotic every time there's a problem, you're going to be sterile, you're going to be like a desert, and you will get cancer and you will die. It's an astonishing, well, if I'm right, because what I'm saying right now sounds ridiculous. It sounds scary, but it's also damn obvious, right? But look at this now. This is from the Centers of Disease Control. We're giving this talk in Atlanta. So on the left, the CDC is showing you your chance of dying from cancer depending on which state you live in. The redder the state, the worse things get. So the South is not looking good. South is not looking good. Now let's look over on the right, antibiotic prescriptions per 1,000 persons. The darker the state, the more the antibiotics are prescribed. Look at that state-by-state correlation between your antibiotic usage and your death from cancer. The antibiotics are sterilizing your body, killing the bacteria and fungi, and you will get cancer. Whoa! Crazy statistics, crazy look, but it never looked like that before. That's the scariest part, or the most astonishing thing. These are the maps from 1970 to 1994. 1994 doesn't sound like that long ago to me. That was, my kids, they're like, that was ages ago, Dad. You're like, but that's recent. 1994, from a science perspective in particular, was a couple days ago. 1994, look at our cancer patterns. Sorry to keep walking in front of that speaker. We've got, this is prostate cancer, this is colon cancer, and this is lung cancer. Those are our three leading causes of cancer death, and you'll see that the death is all happening up in the northwest, northeast. Those maps made us think that voting a Democratic ticket caused cancer. Look what happened over 15 years. We completely reversed the cancer death map in this country. Now keep in mind, all over that country, cancer rates went up big. It doubled across the whole country, but it quadrupled down in the South. There is an insidious genocide going on over the last 25 years, and it's quiet. It's not getting talked about. That genocide is playing out across all socioeconomic levels. It's being played out across all racial boundaries. The South is dying. If you look at that map compared to where we were at the Civil War, it's an interesting thought. There's a different war at hand. And it turns out that war is not just from your doctor. So this is the antibiotic prescription rate. It's disgusting because it's 7.7 million pounds of antibiotics prescribed every year in the United States. Not prescriptions, pounds. 7.7 million pounds of antibiotic capsules going into humans. That is disgusting. But look, it's been stable over that period of time, no increase. So it's not the antibiotic usage from your doctors that has changed this arena of your connection to your organic garden. It's this chemical right here. This chemical is called glyphosate. Glyphosate is the active ingredient in the most famous of all weed killers, Roundup. Have you heard of Roundup? Roundup is on the shelf of every Home Depot, Lowe's, every home improvement shop, every garden shop. It has been on consumer shelves since the 1980s. It has been in our food directly since 1992, starting with our wheat. And then by 1996, our corn, soybean, and then the sugar beet. And so the 4 biggest staple crops that go into our food chain have been sprayed directly with this chemical since 1996. 1996, we saw a pretty big shift start to happen on those maps. This molecule was actually made in 1957 by a Japanese researcher, patented it, and put it on the shelf. He was terrified by this chemical that he created because it was water soluble. A water soluble toxin on a planet that is 70% water would be a disaster. A water soluble toxin. We are now spraying 2 billion kilograms of glyphosate worldwide. 2 billion kilograms is equal to 4.5 billion pounds. So compare 7 million pounds of antibiotic from your doctors, compare that to the 4.5 billion pounds of this chemical. And it turns out this chemical has never been patented as a weed killer. It has been patented as an antibiotic, antifungal, anti-parasite. That chemical kills the organic garden. It kills the organisms in the soil, and it blocks the ability of those organisms and the plants to make nutrients. So let's look at our spraying pattern. If I'm right that this one chemical is responsible for a complete change in our public health maps over the last 30 years, then we should see a huge correlation between the usage of this chemical and our cancer rates. And what you'll see is there's not a great correlation at first glimpse there. 2011, you're looking at the spraying patterns, and you see it's a prevalence in the northern part of the Northwest, where if we look over at the cancer map, we can start to see some cancer there, but it seems to be all south of that where the worst problem is, right? Well, it took me about 6 months of staring at these maps and thinking through this until I came up with that map. That map is the United States, and the red is all of the tributaries of the Mississippi River. A water-soluble toxin being sprayed in billions of pounds across the United States. And if you look at that Mississippi, you can see that some 85% of all of that chemical would be collected into one water system with the last 90 miles between Baton Rouge and New Orleans, Louisiana. That 90 miles is now called Cancer Alley. Highest rates of cancer in the entire developed world are in the last 90 miles of the Mississippi. Recent studies down in this area of those red states down there show that 75% of the air breathed is contaminated with Roundup. 75% of the rainfall is contaminated with Roundup. There is no such thing as organic food in the Midwest and South of the United States anymore. It's being rained on with Roundup. The air it's grown in is Roundup. It's in the soils, it's in the water systems. We have put one chemical, 4.5 billion pounds of it into the world, and we have changed the rate of disease in this world. How is that possible? What does the glyphosate do? How could it possibly be damaging? How come nobody knows this yet? Well, if you look at the patents on this chemical, it tells you exactly what it does. It blocks this enzyme pathway that we call the shikimate pathway. That enzyme pathway is the reason why Monsanto and all the chemical companies keep saying this is a safe compound. They say this is safer than water. That used to be their tagline, Roundup, safer than water. The reason why they said that is this enzyme pathway doesn't exist in humans. It only exists in our bacteria, fungi, and plant system that feed us. And so they say, oh, we're just going to spray the crops. We'll damage the crops, but not the human. Well, we have to see what that enzyme pathway does, and it does this. Aromatic amino acids. Your body is made up of over 200,000 different proteins. 200,000 different proteins builds your incredibly exquisite body. Those 200,000 proteins are made from just 26 letters, if you will. They're called amino acids. These are the building blocks for all of your protein. There's 26 of those guys. And a big handful of those are made by this pathway. And most concerning, we don't have that enzyme pathway in the human, and so we can't even make those building blocks. So we call these the essential amino acids. there's 9 essential amino acids among the 26. The other 17 we can make within our body. No matter what, we can eat anything, and if it doesn't have that amino acid, we can simply make it. But there's 9 of those that are so precious, they can't be made in the human body. They have to be consumed from our environment. 5 minutes? Okay. All right. All right. Yeah, I'm going to stretch that thereabouts. And so anyway, you guys are welcome to get up in 5 minutes. I will not take it all personally. You guys can come back and watch the video that's being taken here. But I'm going to push through some more information because I think it's the most important stuff you guys can take home. What does it mean to be human? What it means to be human we thought was all about the human DNA. Each human cell contains about 1 meter of DNA. If you multiply this out, the adult human body contains enough DNA, one person, to wrap around Mother Earth 2 million times. This young woman right here, you would wrap around Earth 2 million times if we put your DNA end to end. If we really understood the glory of being human, we would collapse on our knees in front of every person we ever met. We are so extraordinary. We would never know what color we were if we could see the glory we are knit together of. We are so cared for, we are so loved, we are so divinely appointed, but it looks like we are appointed to not just be human, we are appointed to be involved with a larger ecosystem. There are 3 conceptions of every child. One is to get the genes from mom and dad. That's 20,000 measly genes. I say measly because a fruit fly has 13,000 genes. A flea has 30,000 genes. You are 2/3 as complicated as a flea at the genetic level. Has anybody ever told you that? 2/3 as complicated as a flea at the genetic level should give you a sense of real permission. You need to write yourself a big permission slip, and so if you forgot your keys and you can't find such and such, just say, you know what? I'm 2/3 as complicated as a flea. I'm doing all right. All right? After your measly 20,000 genes, that's not enough intelligence to get you to the complexity you are. You need to interact with the rest of the genes that are carried in the human body. The mitochondria live inside your cells, and they have genes. The bacteria have 2 million genes compared to your 20,000. The bacteria have 2 million genes that are defining your health. They're doing most of the work. Some 95% of the work done in the human body is being done by the bacteria and the fungi. Your species has 20,000 genes. The 40,000 species of bacteria with 2 million genes. The parasites, 300,000 species, 2 billion genes. The fungi, 5 million species of fungi, 2 trillion genes. 2 trillion genes around you. The number of viruses on Earth, 10 to the 31. We don't have a name for that number. That's a 1 with 31 zeros after it. That is 10 million times more than our stars in the entire universe. Viruses on planet Earth today. If you take a picture of that and you think for a second, we have a public health campaign to vaccinate our children against 5 of those bugs. Is that clever? Does that make any sense? Is it possible that we're going to gain health by eliminating 5 or 10 or 50 of the millions of bugs, of the billions of bugs we're surrounded by? I've got good news for you. If you were not intentioned to be here, they would not have let you be here. They are not against you, they are for you. And if you are in war with the bacteria and fungi and you're just washing yourself down with alcohol rub every chance you get, you're going to be sterile and you're going to be sick and you're going to get antibiotics and you're going to be more stale and you're going to die early. We need to be in touch with life, and life is barely human on this planet. All right. I'm going to go past this piece here, and then because I want to jump into this piece because this is about food sustainability right here. You guys came to find out about food independence, and this is the topic. We are currently killing 60 billion animals a year for human consumption. Can you wrap your head around that? We are slaughtering 60 billion animals on the planet. We are growing animals at such a rate to feed humans right now that we have now completely changed the animal ecosystem on the planet. 90% of the animals greater than 1 kilogram is now a chicken, a turkey, a pig, or a cow. We have completely lost 40% of the ecodiversity on the planet in the last 40 years, and we've replaced it with chickens, turkey, and the rest. And those 60 billion animals, I have bad news, are suffering. So imagine for a second 60 billion sentient beings suffering on a planet, just so we can have a good chicken sandwich. I am really encouraging all of you to think about reducing your meat intake, at least until we clean up this growth, right? We need to start eating more carrots, because the carrot is not suffering as it grows. It is on purpose. I can tell you that pig does not feel on purpose when it's being suffered for 1.5 years before it's slaughtered to bacon. But I have something bigger of concern, is that genetics that I just showed you is showing us that the genes that are in your food are actually in your bloodstream today. The microRNA is this huge information stream coming out of the genetic code of these billions and trillions of genes around you, and it's turning on and off your proteins. And so the state at which your food is right before it ends up on your plate is the thing you're going to most receive from that food. Our cows are suffering. They are suffering, they're lonely, they're terrified. They are very much autistic. If you go on a feedlot today, they behave just like an autistic child. Our food is inducing the information of panic, fear, sensory overload, and we're putting that food into our children. We now know scientifically that the genetic information from that stressed out cow is in our children. It's in your blood. 35% of the on-off switches for your genes in your bloodstream right now are from the bacteria, fungi, and from the food that you just ate. Our comedians are dying of depression and suicide. Our presidents are so angry and self-absorbed they can't communicate with other humans. What is the state of humanity today? Because we are consuming a terrified, panicked, collapsing food chain that is grown under a chemical environment. The food that those animals are grown on have 10 times more glyphosate, some cases 100 times more glyphosate than our food has. This is our gene pool. It is the entire planet. If we keep killing it, we will die. If we keep killing it, we will die. I'm going to cut through because we're running out of time here. But I want you to start thinking about this differently in regard to how your communities are starting to communicate. It needs to come down to, how do we touch healthy food again? How do we get back in touch with a food chain that is not in terror and panic? And the reality is we need to jump into an industry. I'm going to fast forward into the heart of the good news. Actually, I want to give you this because this is an important public health piece. Take a picture of that slide. A bunch of you taking pictures there. That slide takes you from birth to death right now of the pattern of leaky gut and leaky brain from this one chemical, glyphosate or Roundup. Starts with colic in our newborns, ends with dementia at the end of life. Every other disease I've talked about today fits in there. On the numbers on your left side there, 0 through 78 there, are showing you the general ages at which we see these diseases are onsetting. It's all from one thing. It's all from a chemical that we're eating that is destroying the nutrients of our food, that's destroying our genome, that's destroying our ability to build healthy human bodies. So that's the disease pattern that we see over a lifetime. That same chemical pathway that I showed you that's blocking the ability of our food to deliver the basic building blocks of human life, that same pathway makes the medicines in our food. Have you heard, "Let thy food be thy medicine"? That was Hippocrates. That was true right up until the 1990s. Now we are growing food that is devoid of the medicines that should be in our food because Roundup, glyphosate, literally blocks the ability of the food to put the medicine in there. The enzymes that would make that anti-malarial, anti-asthma, anti-cancer, the vasodilatory compounds that would be antihypertensives, that would save the kidneys and everything else. Chronic kidney disease, #1 disease worldwide now. We've taken out of the food chain the chemicals that would be the medicines that would help us fight that hypertension and end-stage kidney disease. Analgesics, we've taken the ability of our food to treat pain out of the food. We now have the biggest narcotic addiction problem in the world because we have eliminated the ability of our foods to palliate the pain that we feel. We are suffering. And so this is the legacy of a single chemical. That takes you through all of those levels if you want to shoot a pic of that. But that will just be a summarized slide for what we know now this one chemical does to human biology. And as we lose that human biology and we suffer underneath that pressure, Mother Earth reveals her grace. Here we are on Earth and we're spraying an enormous amount of chemical around the world to kill the bacteria and fungi. And then we just found out in 2012 in my labs that this chemical, this molecule here on that side is the solution to everything. It's made by bacteria and fungi. And what we did is we go back 50 million years. We go to a fossil soil level in the desert of the United States and we start pulling out the information from old soil before humans messed with it. And you find out that that molecule is made by all kinds of different species of bacteria and fungi, slightly different each time. So we call them carbon snowflakes because each species makes its own molecule. That molecule, turns out, is the antidote to Roundup. It functions as the communication network across the body, but this is what it does, is it counters the effects of Roundup at the gut lining and the brain and beyond that. And so there's the control membrane. This is the small intestine. You look down at that, you affect it with glyphosate for 20 minutes, and the whole membrane starts to fall apart. So the Roundup in your food, which is present in all your food and water now, is destroying your gut lining. As you destroy that gut lining, you become overwhelmed with inflammation. You get autoimmune conditions, everything else. But the terahydrite down here, that molecule from the soil, 50 million years ago, we put that onto the gut membrane and the glyphosate does no harm. That's pretty weird. Mother Earth, and perhaps the God that would have created that, might plan 50 million years ago for a chemical that would be sprayed on her soils and planted in that fossil soil level as an antidote to this chemical that we would spray. I tell you that because I think it's something about grace. It is a poetic beauty to that gives us goosebumps. Why would we be cared for that much? I'm going to skip some of this other stuff, and I'm going to go to this last slide because it's so extraordinary. This is the most profound piece of science I've ever seen. This is a biophysics study. It's a simple straight line, and yet it tells a story so divine. What it is it's measuring the frequency of resonance. Everything resonates all the time. The universe resonates, and the universe resonates down at the bottom right-hand corner there. Very slow frequency of resonance, and it's huge. So this graph is mapping the diameter of each structure in the universe and its frequency of resonance. On the very top left is Planck's constant. It's the vibration of the electromagnetic field in a vacuum. It's this tiny little energy that frequency vibrates super high pitch. And it's tiny, tiny. It's the tiniest thing we ever have measured. And so those are your two endpoints on that line, and then everything starts to line up in the entire known universe along that line in regard to its diameter and its frequency of resonance. And right in the middle of the mathematical universe, what do you think's there? What? Between the smallest thing ever known and the biggest thing of the universe itself, dead center, is us? Are you here on purpose? Are you divine? You look to be the entire purpose of all of it. You're the event horizon is what the physicists call this. The center point of any system like this is called the event horizon. I love that word. You are the event horizon of our species. You are the horizon. You are the event. You are the future. You are the now. You are the reason we are here. It's something about me and you being in communion. Something about you and I being in fellowship and laughing together and moving together, swinging our arms around together. That's fun, that's fellowship, that's real knowledge being passed on because we care for one another. Not because I want to sell you a drug. Not because I want to start a business. I want to be human, and I want my children to be around other humans. And the story that unfolded out of today, I had to speed through it and I apologize, but the story is the more diverse the bacteria get, the healthier the organisms are that grow around it. Don't you think we should learn something from that? Yeah. The more diverse the population, the stronger we get. That works all the time, every day. It is our diversity that makes us special. It is our diversity that defines rational thought. We check and balance each other just like the bacteria check the fungus, and the fungus checks the bacteria. It is our diversity that's our greatest strength, and I need to get you to your meal. And so that seems apropos. I will stick around as long as you want to and talk and answer questions, but I do need to formally cut you guys loose here. Yeah, question there.